Hi guys, Sam from AlphaGeekStation.com bringing you a quick tip guide on how to build your own computer. Obviously we recommend getting all your components together at once and building in one sitting. This is so if there is any fault with any of the hardware, you should be able to work out which individual piece is causing the problem. Obviously you can then return the faulty part. So first of all, let's talk about the motherboard and the CPU. I'm using the P8P67LE from Gigabyte motherboard, and I'm using the i7 2600K from Intel CPU. This is very good at being overclocked, and that's why I've also bought a aftermarket heatsink. Hopefully that should be able to deal with any heat increase from the overclocking. Next, let's talk about the hard drives. I've gone for a 1TB SATA 3 6GB per second hard drive and a SATA 2 3GB per second backup hard drive of 250GB. The only reason I'm taking the second hard drive is because it's got some stuff from a previous build I would quite like to keep. Next, let's talk about graphics cards. I've gone for the ATI Radeon HD 6950, and I'm going to be taking two of those in crossfire mode. Obviously this will generate a lot of heat, and it's very important you have the correct number of PCI slots. Fortunately I do, and this will allow me to run this setting. Let's quickly mention optical drives. I have gone for a cheap DVD drive. Obviously you do need to have one, however I wouldn't recommend splashing out on a Blu-ray or anything like that, because most games and software are now downloadable. So, you don't really need to splash out on it, however you do need to have one to install drivers for things like your graphics cards, your motherboard, and so on. So worth taking, but don't splash out. Now let's talk about the RAM. I've got 16GB of Vengeance RAM, that's running at 1600 MHz a second. What's very important is make sure your motherboard supports it. I have made sure that mine does, and it's not in overclocked mode. Some motherboards do support higher frequencies of RAM, but they are overclocked. It's best, in my opinion, to go for RAM that your motherboard will happily handle instead of having to fiddle with the BIOS and the timings and so on. It's just easier and you'll get less faults. When you choose your power supply, it's very important you make sure you have a power supply which is suitable for your needs. What that means is not going over the top, spending a lot of money on a huge power supply that you're not going to need and that will kick out more heat, but also making sure you have enough to run your systems. As we know, I am going to be using a dual graphics card setting, and I do have a fairly substantial CPU, and the case that I'll be mentioning in a second is also pretty power hungry, so I've gone for a 775 watt, which I believe is perfect for my needs. As my system will be kicking out a lot of heat, I have gone for the NZXT Phantom Enthusiast case in white, which is a full tower case. This is for the reason that it's very good at dealing with heat. It has quite a few fans in it, also it has an excellent cable management system. So this should hopefully assist my system in getting rid of the heat that's caused by the dual graphics cards and the overclocked processor. Okay, let's talk about assembly. Obviously you're going to want to open your case so you can view what you have to work with. Obviously you will notice I do have slots for cable management there, and a couple of toolless systems like for my hard drive and my optical drives, which is very useful. However, this isn't a completely toolless case, so I will have to do a few little adjustments myself. But now you've opened your case, you should be able to see what your issues are and how you can deal with them. It's very important that you have the necessary tools and equipment for the job. This includes checking you have the correct screws. As you can see, I've made sure all my screws are in individual packets, so I can quickly tell which screw will go with which component. So let's start installing our components. What I did was I first installed my CPU to the motherboard. This is because I had to put in a bracket behind my motherboard to allow my aftermarket heatsink. But after I've done that, you're going to want to put the motherboard straight into the case. This is because everything else will install onto the motherboard, so obviously you're going to want to put that in first. I then recommend putting in your power supply. This is so you can start working out your cable management. After you've installed your power supply, you should connect the connectors from your case onto your motherboard. This will allow you to power the case on and make sure everything is working. It's a good idea next to install the graphics cards. I found out my motherboard had a slight issue. By putting in the second graphics card, it does actually cover the bottom SATA slots. So if I didn't have that knowledge, I may have been tempted to use those SATA slots to have my hard drives connected to. As it was, I knew that I didn't have access to them, so I used the 3 at the top. Obviously, if I hadn't have installed it in this order, I wouldn't have been aware of the problem, which would have caused a problem later down the line. So that leaves us with 3 more parts to put in. So you can do those in whatever order you particularly like, as they don't take up much room. So obviously those 3 parts are the optical drive, the hard drive and RAM. So once they are installed, you have everything in your system, and it's just a case of making sure all your data cables and power cables go to the correct place, making sure that you use full use of your cable management system if you have it in your case. So there we are, you've now installed all your components. All you need to do now is put in a power cable and a monitor and make sure everything works. And as you can see, my system is fully running, and hopefully yours is too. All that's left to do now is enjoy your new system, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this quick overview of how to build a computer, and if there's any questions you have, ask them in the comments and hopefully I will get back to you as soon as possible. For any other advice, go to www.alphageekstation.com and ask any of the friendly admin staff there, and they should be able to help you out with whatever your needs. Anyway guys, please comment, rate and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you in the future.